There's another issue going forward.
Mhm.
Is it necessary for the security of the United States that Russia pay some price for doing this? If, as they said, as you said, they did it.
I think there is no doubt that when any foreign government tries to impact the integrity of our elections, that we need to take action, and we will, at a time and place of our own choosing. Some of it may be explicit and publicized, some of it may not be. But Mr. Putin is well aware of my feelings about this because I spoke to him directly about it. And there is among the big powers, there has been a traditional understanding of that everybody's trying to gather intelligence on everybody else. It's no secret that Russian intelligence officers or Chinese or, for that matter, Israeli or British or other intelligence agencies, that their job is to get insight into the workings of other countries that they're not reading in the newspapers every day. There's a difference between that and the kind of malicious cyber attacks that steal trade secrets or engage in industrial espionage, something that we've seen the Chinese do. And there's a difference between that and activating intelligence in a way that's designed to influence elections. So we have been working hard to make sure that what we do is proportional, that what we do is meaningful. One of the things that we're going to have to do over the next decade is to ultimately arrive at some rules of what is a new game, and that is the way in which traditional propaganda and traditional covert influence efforts are being turbocharged by the internet and by the cyber world. And so the whole issue of cybersecurity and how we play defense, how we think about offense, and how we avoid an escalation of a major cyber war or a cyber arms race is something that some of our smartest folks in government and in the private sector are spending a lot of time thinking about, because there is an asymmetry here. We are more digitalized. Our economy is more advanced. It's much wealthier. And it means that we have certain vulnerabilities that some of our adversaries don't have. This is actually a good example of where, in addition to whatever actions that we take bilaterally against Russia, we've got to spend some time working at an international level to start instituting some norms, the same way we did with things like nuclear weapons, because ultimately we can have a situation where everybody's worse off. That's what we did with China when we were seeing repeated hacking primarily for industrial espionage purposes, commercial purposes. They were stealing, technology and ideas. And I had a very blunt conversation with President Xi saying, if you don't stop it, here's what we are going to do. But what we also did was we mobilized the G20 and the G7 and the United Nations to start adopting basic rules saying this is not something you do. And that can make a difference over time.
If whatever response you take is not completed by January 20th, do you have any reason to have confidence that President Trump will continue it?
My view is that this is not a partisan issue. And part of what we should be doing is to try to take it out of election season and move it into governing season. The irony of all this, of course, is that for most of my presidency, there's been a pretty sizable wing of the Republican Party that has consistently criticized me for not being tough enough on Russia. Some of those folks during the campaign endorsed Donald Trump despite the fact that a central tenet of his foreign policy was we shouldn't be so tough on Russia. And that kind of inconsistency, I think, makes it appear, at least, that their particular position on Russia on any given day depends on what's politically expedient. There was a poll that came out a couple of days ago that said that 37% of Republicans have a favorable view of Vladimir Putin. Now think about that. Over a third of Republican voters think Putin's a good guy. This is somebody, the former head of the KGB, who is responsible for crushing democracy in Russia, muzzling the press, throwing political dissidents in jail, countering American efforts to expand freedom at every turn, is currently making decisions that's leading to a slaughter in Syria. And a big chunk of the Republican Party, which prided itself during the Reagan era and for decades that followed as being the bulwark against Russian influence, now suddenly is embracing him. And my point here is that it's very important that we do not let the inter-family argument between Americans, the domestic political differences between Democrats and Republicans, obscure the need for us to stand together, figure out what it is that the Russians are interested in doing in terms of influencing our democratic process, and inoculating ourselves from it. And that requires us having a clear-eyed view about it. It requires us not to relitigate the election. It requires us not to point fingers. It requires us just to say, here's what happened, let's be honest about it, and let's not use it as a political football, but let's figure out how we prevent this from happening in the future. Because it's not just going to be Russia.
It sounds like you hope any response would continue after January 20, but do you have any reason to know that it would?
Well, I can't look into my crystal ball, and that's probably a question better directed at the president-elect. I can say that I've had a conversation with the president-elect about our foreign policy generally and the importance of us making sure that in how we approach intelligence gathering and how we think about fighting terrorism and keeping the country secure, and how we think about our relationship to multilateral organizations, that we recognize America's exceptionalism, our indispensability in the world, in part draws from our values and our ideals, and the fact that even our adversaries generally respect our adherence to rule of law, our transparency, our openness. And if we start losing that, if other countries start seeing that, well, America doesn't care about these issues, or it's just a might makes right environment, and we're not speaking out on behalf of our values and demonstrating our values, then America's going to be significantly weakened.